Good morning, sir. How you feeling?
Oh, not so good.
You have been in rough shape the last week here.
I have. I slept funny and ruined my whole body.
This is the age we're in right now, Adam. Is sleep injuries are a real thing.
I don't know what happened. I woke up, I couldn't lift my left arm. I mean, I can move it now, but there was I bet you 5 days where I couldn't lift my arm past like shoulder height.
You're on the 10-day IL
I'm on the
for
10-day
sleeping improperly.
It was
Yeah.
bad. I woke up. I had a shower the other day. I realized I had bruises all over my chest.
You're bruised up
I'm
even.
bruised up. It's, it's inexplicable. I don't know what's going on. My wife is very concerned.
Yes.
I should probably be concerned, but I mean, I'm a man, so I'm probably going to just ignore my health.
Yeah, right. You treat your body like I treated my cars in my early 20s, which is the problem will fix itself, right?
Exactly. Who
If I
needs
just ignore this, it'll fix itself.
I probably need an oil change on this body of mine. That would cost time and money. So
Yeah.
instead, here's another cup of coffee. Anyways, good morning to you.
Yes, well, thank you, and welcome everybody to the Walk Off. I'm Scott Belford, joined by my hobbled co-host here, Adam Mack. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's guest, I'm actually really excited about it. We sat down with Ali Schroeder last month. She is with the Vancouver Island University Mariners and the Canadian women's national baseball team, and her interview was just phenomenal. What is she, Adam? 20?
Yeah, something
She's
like that.
she's young. She's going to university.
She's not
This is her
hurting
first.
herself in her sleep.
No, she's not hurting herself in her sleep. She throws 84 miles an hour, and she is the first woman to play in the collegiate leagues in BC with the boys. So very cool story there. We pick her brain about everything baseball. Again, that's coming up in 30 to 40 minutes, I would say. Of course, Tuesday, we have been running our radio show every single Tuesday. That is on 365 Sportscast. You can catch that live before every Tuesday Jays game. So we've been doing that at 6 Eastern time. And please stop in and join us. And then we live stream the Jays game, which you can also join us. That's on our YouTube channel, the Walk Off Podcast. All right, buddy. We had an off day yesterday for the Jays. Should we get into this? Let's do it. Let's start with injuries, shall we?
Might as well.
Right? Because that has been pretty much the story of the last 2 weeks. The Jays have been hit hard by injuries, and it's definitely affected their play. The good news, let's start with that. So George Springer, our $150 million man here, signed in the offseason. Very excited. The hand shuffle, get in, get on board. So he is actually playing a simulated game today at the alternate site in Dunedin. He's playing center field. He's getting some live bats in. And the dream, the hope is we see him in the lineup against the Tampa Bay Rays tomorrow. That's the hope. He should be back this weekend sometime. They're going to do the alternate site simulated game and see how he feels.
Right. Hopefully no setbacks. Knock on wood. Joe Woodhead.
Exactly. Nate Pearson is throwing 2 to 3 innings in that same inter-squad simulated game that they're playing. He's not going to be back this week. They're trying to build his arm up to 5 innings. So they'd like him to be able to throw about 80 pitches before he makes his season debut with the Blue Jays. He's at 2 to 3 innings this outing. My guess is 5 days from today, he will pitch 4 to 6 innings. And then the next time in the rotation, he should be back with this Toronto Blue Jays starting rotation, which is good news. That's about 10 days away. Now let's get to the bullpen good news. There is some bad news in here, but we are going to get to the good news first. So the good news is Tyler Chatwood, he could be activated off the IL today. We could see him pitching out of the bullpen against this Rays team, at least by this weekend. Jordan Romano looks about the same. Probably not activated today, but sometime this weekend is the hope. Those are 2 big, high leverage inning guys that are coming back to this team. So that's good news, man.
Big time.
especially when you see. We'll talk Rafael Dollis a little down the road here. I got a bit of a rant about him. I do like what he's doing, and he has been good in high leverage situations. Just not a pretty guy to watch. We'll deep dive into that. The bad news: Thomas Hatch. We've been saying for a while now he was pitching off the mound. He looked like he was building up. He had a setback here. He has been shut down for a few weeks. It's looking like his return's not going to be until middle of June, so he's out for a couple more months. Not great news on that front. Julian Merriweather, kind of a big revelation for this bullpen as of the start of this season. He's probably out until mid-May, early June. He's not throwing right now either, so they're hoping to let him rest his oblique for a couple of weeks before he gets back on a throwing program and some baseball. They are optimistic that his oblique isn't as bad as originally thought, but it's one of those weird injuries, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is the injury list, and it is a lengthy one.
It is.
We got a big win in Boston on Wednesday.
We did split the series, just a 2-game series.
They cobbled that one together between pitching Tommy Malone and throwing the kitchen sink.
Funny how that works. You put out Ryu, you get the loss. You put together a bullpen day that's
questionable at best. And you know what the difference is? The Jays scored 6 runs on Wednesday in comparison to 1 or 2 or whatever it was there. Yeah. Like they have really struggled putting up runs here. I've got a little stat that kind of highlights that. So Bo Bichette and Vladdy Guerrero have literally put this team on their shoulders and carried them. So currently combined in the 18 games the Jays have played, Bo and Vladdy have a 2.1 wins above replacement. That is massive.
This early in the season, that's huge.
This early in the season, that is absolutely insane. Now, to show you how poorly the rest of this team has played offensively, the rest of the Blue Jays hitters combined have a minus 0.6 wins above replacement. So the total Jays offensive WAR is 1.5. So everyone else on this team is bringing down Bo and Vladdy. Obviously, that is a ridiculous stat, and even if they tried to, couldn't replicate that over the next 18 games. No team is that cold, especially with a lineup of proven hitters like the Blue Jays. So I think it's one of those things where some of these guys are starting to find their swing. Charlie Montoya, and we've talked about this before, has done a few weird things. Like, I still don't like that in that Kansas City doubleheader, right? Lourdes finally started to flash the bat a little bit. He had 3 hits in those 2 games, 2 hits in the second game of the doubleheader, and then Charlie gave him the day off on Sunday. And I mean, this is a guy who has been struggling all season to find it at the plate. You think once he starts to show a little sign of life, you'd stick him back out there.
He's made some maddening calls. We could do a whole episode just on Charlie Montoya's crazy decision-making process.
Absolutely, man. So let's talk. Okay, I'm jumping all over the place a little bit here. I did wish to go back to injuries for a second because there is some more good news. Ross Stripling looks like he's day-to-day at this point. He's throwing off a mound. He's still managed to kind of keep his arm strength up, which is great news. So he should be able to step back into this rotation. And it splits up the lefties that are going on right now in a very lefty-heavy starting rotation for the Blue Jays. So you can stick Ross Stripling in there between, let's say, a Matz and a Ray, or a Ray and a Ryu, which gives the opposing hitters a completely different look, which is exactly what this team needs right now. Okay, back to what we were talking about. Charlie has made some weird choices, and the left side of this infield has been disastrous defensively. Okay, Bo Bichette and Cavan Biggio have been booting the ball, missing throws, bouncing throws.
It's been every kind of error you can imagine.
It's been ugly, man.
Yeah.
It's been really ugly. And it is a concern, and I know Jays fans are kind of losing their mind a little bit about this. And we talked to Ben Wagner on Tuesday, Sportsnet's Ben Wagner, about this. And he mentioned that when it comes to arm strength, and I agree with him on this, and we were very high on how well Cavin had played third base during spring. Right. For a guy who had almost never played it. He had a few reps under his belt, and they were like halfway through games where they're like, well, Cavin can play anywhere. We can stick him at third. Yeah. And now he's this team's full-time third baseman, and there are no other options. People are screaming to move Vladdy over there. I mean, that's ridiculous. The guy is so dang hot right now. Why mess with success? Mm-hmm. These are the same people that last year were screaming for them to remove Vladdy from third and put him at first. So...
oh, fans are the worst.
We are the worst. Yeah.
We are the worst.
So let's kind of get into this Biggio situation. Where are you at on Cavan Biggio at third base? Because here's how I'm seeing it.
Okay.
He's gripping the ball extra hard. He is in his own head. I truly don't really believe that this is a... Cavan Biggio isn't talented enough and doesn't have the defensive acumen to play the position. I truly believe he does. I think he's even showed it. Now, he's in his head, and I don't want to say the yips or anything crazy like that, but man, he's gripping that ball tight. He is double thinking every single throw he makes across the diamond, and you watch him do it. He is laboring mentally, dude. I mean, that last throw, did you watch the game against Boston on Wednesday?
I caught the end of it, so I caught everything to do with Cavin that you're about to talk about.
Okay. So in the 8th inning, with 2 outs, Rafael Dollis on the mound, runner at first base, routine ground ball to third base, Cavin completely misses the throw. Bounces it in the dirt, off to the side. They got lucky that it hit the netting where it did and didn't wind up going into the dugout of the Red Sox and costing the Jays what would have been a run and maybe even the game at that point, because it was 4-3 at that point.
Right.
9th inning, Cavan Biggio gets a routine ground ball to third base again. He makes the throw this time, but every fan watching held their breath. And everyone on that field held their breath. And Cavin held his breath. Like, you could just see, like, he had so much time, and he just looked at the ball, and he looked at the first baseman, and he just took a big breath and hucked it. And it was fine. But my God, that doesn't inspire very much confidence.
No, and that's the thing is, like, I think he needed that. Like, he needed... It's one of those, like, get right back on the horse situations.
Yeah.
And so I think that was good for him. You know, especially with the off day. Like, if he ends the night with that horrible throw and then gets a whole day off to think about it, I think it's just going to be in his head that much more. So I'm not going to say he's out of the woods yet because he had one good throw at the end of the game, but I do think that was hopefully, and this is me trying to be a silver lining kind of guy, but after I saw that throw, I was really thinking, boy, did he need that.
Agreed. And the team needed that. Yeah. That infield needed that. Where are you at on his arm strength? Do you agree with Wagner that he has it? Or do you worry about it a little bit?
Well, I'm not sold on his arm strength.
Yeah.
I'm sold on his fielding ability at third base. I'm not sold on... I'm sure we'll get into this too, but Bichette at shortstop. I'm not as confident in Bichette's fielding at shortstop as I am Biggio's fielding at third.
Yes, and I feel similar. The left side of the infield is struggling, man, and I think it's in both of their heads a little bit.
I don't think either of those guys is our shortstop and third baseman of the future.
That's fair.
I mean,
Well, listen, there's 2 angles on this, right? There's the angle of you let Bichette play shortstop until he has proven over a year or two that it just can't be done. Yep. And I mean, some people bring up Marcus Semien, and it's a good comparison because defensively, he was just a bad shortstop for a few years before he kind of put it together there. Now, the other argument is, and this is how I'm kind of personally feeling, and we'll see what side of this you're on.
Okay.
The Blue Jays are in a very different spot than the Oakland Athletics were when they were giving Marcus Semien all the time in the world for him to develop at shortstop.
Yep.
The Athletics were not a winning team at the time. They were not putting a very good product on the field, and they were kind of in one of those rebuild modes they get in sometimes where they're
casual,
letting their young players get the reps they needed. They were where the Blue Jays are 2 years ago when they were doing this with Semien.
Yep. Here's my thing with Biggio again before we get too distracted on Bichette is I think you can learn to play defensively. I don't think you can learn to have a stronger arm.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at with both of those guys. I think I'm not at all upset with Biggio at third base because he doesn't even he's not asking for third.
It's not his fault that they're playing him at every position. It's not his fault that they looked at this lineup during the offseason and said, you know what? We don't need to strengthen the left side of this infield. We'll just move Biggio to third. Yeah. That is not his fault.
No.
And he has done everything management has asked him. And it's one of those things where I truly believe his bat is ice cold because of his defensive switch here. He is so in his own head about third base that it is literally taken the bat out of his hand.
Yeah, because, look at the exact opposite being true with Vlad Guerrero.
Yeah.
He is looking so good at first base, and it has given nothing but helped his offensive performance. So
exactly.
I don't think either guy is the guy of the future. I think Biggio will be there until something else comes along. I think he'll be there all year. I think Bichette will be at shortstop all year. But I think Biggio is either going to be an outfielder, like an everyday outfielder on this team, or he's going to not have a spot on this team. As much as the versatility is so nice.
Yeah.
I can't see us having a guy who is just versatile.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's just unless he can,
especially if he doesn't start hitting again. I think Cavin will start hitting, and I think he will start taking walks again. And I think he is going to find his swing. And Cavan Biggio, I feel like I know what he is offensively, and I could be wrong, but I think he's a guy who hits around 240, 250 average, 350 on base percentage, takes a lot of walks, knows how to do everything with the bat, puts the bat on the ball, can lay down a bunt, should be hitting in that 8 or 9 hole, looking to turn the lineup over. He's like a secondary leadoff guy at the end of that.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel so much better about his role with the team if he is a right fielder who can play in the infield as opposed to whatever the fuck he is right now. Excuse me.
And but no, you're right though. And there's no room for him in the outfield. So now he's kind of pigeonholed into this spot that he is not used to, still improving at.
Look,
isn't very good at right now.
Look, the Blue Jays are going to add pieces this offseason.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yeah.
When they signed Springer, they told him, that was part of the deal of him coming here was, look, we are not going to turn off the tap after we sign you. Right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a methodical process. We're going to do things smart. But there's no way they can address that infield this offseason. Semien's gone. Maybe they re-sign him. Sure. But there's going to be a lot of shortstops out there.
There are.
There's going to be... Chris Bryant looks pretty good for the Cubs right now, and the Cubs are a dumpster fire.
Yep.
That would be an improvement at third base.
Sure would. Would take some money to do that. And I mean, we are at 144 games left.
Yeah.
This is all going to play itself out, and we're going to have a clear picture. Like, this is all stipulation and what if and how does this season play out. And, obviously, I truly don't believe the left field or the left side of this infield is going to be as bad as it has been. I kind of am at the point where I'm like, it can't be.
It can't be. Statistically,
how can it get worse? These are professional ball players. It can't get worse than this. And if it does, I think we're going to see Santiago Espinal in at third base. I think that's just going to be what happens.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is he's better defensively than Cavan Biggio at third base. And
with the way Cavin's hitting, he's better offensively right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, again, I hope something works out for Cavin. I love Cavan Biggio.
Me too. And we've been high on him since we started this podcast almost a year ago. Yeah. Like, he's a guy that we both have constantly touted how versatile he is. And we'll move on from Cavin here. But he has been the biggest concern on this team offensively and defensively. When you just look at...
No. Danny Jansen.
Who's been worse defensively?
Danny Jansen is so much worse in every regard.
Okay. I'll give you that.
Because Danny Jansen is supposed to be a bat catcher.
Yeah.
So all the slack we're giving Cavan Biggio, Danny Jansen gets no slack.
Yeah.
No,
and it's a good point. I mean, the guy's hitting
70.
I know.
For a batting average.
Yeah.
We are not lumping Cavan Biggio in with Danny Jansen.
No, you're right. You're right. Catching is a big question mark on this team.
Yeah.
It's a very serious concern. It's an actual concern.
Yeah. Very concerned. I mean, he can't throw anybody out. Those fly balls that go straight up. We just watched one against the Red Sox. He lost it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's struggling. That's for sure. I don't know how long they run with him. Like, this is one of those things where you're like, how much rope do they give Danny Jansen? Because they've been giving him rope since 2018.
Yes.
Like,
the only terrible answer to that is, what else do they have?
Mm-hmm. No, it's true.
I mean, a catcher that they got for cash in trade?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, no, I know. It's like, do we go with a slightly above average minor league catcher in Juan Gratterall, who has a little bit of major league experience? Do we bring up Riley Adams, who, I mean, had a good spring, but probably still needs some maturation?
I don't know.
Gabriel Morano's too far down the ranks to rush him.
I mean, he's got the highest ceiling of everybody, but that doesn't mean he's the most MLB ready.
And we've talked about this lots. A seasoned veteran catcher can go a long ways, like constantly giving this starting rotation young catchers who haven't learned how to call a game
really
yet.
Not helping the pitching staff.
It's not. And this is one thing that when we chatted with Zahn, when we chatted with Greg Zahn, he brought up that it took him 6 years in the major leagues before he felt like he could actually call a good game.
And this is
Think about
that.
This
is a guy with major league pedigree in his blood,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, his dad and his uncle both played in the MLB. He was a catcher his whole life coming up and still didn't figure out how to call a game until he was a pro at the highest level for 6 years.
And, I mean, the closest guy to that in this Jays organization is Danny Jansen. All right, let's move off catcher.
Please.
I wasn't even going to get into Jansen here.
Okay.
You just wouldn't let me have Biggio being the...
He deserves more than that.
So let's talk this bullpen, because this bullpen has been incredibly impressive, especially with all the injuries. I can't think of another bullpen in Major League Baseball that could lose their top three
wild
high leverage guys and still keep chugging along. It's incredible.
Yates is gone, Merriweather's gone, Romano's gone.
Yeah.
Still.
1, 2, 3. Their top three guys in that bullpen are not there right now. And this bullpen has not collapsed in on itself. It has been a joy to watch. Listen, Rafael Dollis, I do wish to get into this because he is a guy who has proven that he can do it for this team. He had a blow up earlier in the season, which is why his ERA looks ugly at 6 point whatever it is. Right. But if you were to take that one inning where he allowed 4 runs out of that, he's been unbeatable. Yep. He is a guy who, I'm just going to straight up say it, he's probably not a major league pitcher, but he has found a way to become one. He is crafty beyond crafty. He is a guy who gets it done, even though it is not pretty to watch. And this is a guy that we've mentioned this before, but I'm going to really harp on it. If you are a fan of the Toronto Blue Jays, yeah, it gets a little scary when Rafael Dollis comes into the game in the 8th or 9th inning. It does. Because this is a guy that if you give a little bit of leeway, he's going to take it. Okay, you give Rafael Dollis some breathing room, he is sucking air, mouth open. He's going to go right. You give him an inch, he's going to take every last little millimeter of that inch, right? Like, he is the Grant Fuhrer of relievers. That's a little Alberta hockey reference. Great for reference. The and Grant Fuhrer was famous for, you could score on him. Oh, sure, you could score on him. You're just always going to score one fewer goal than the Edmonton Oilers. We're going to
win every game 7-6.
Exactly. So Rafael Dollis comes in there, and if he feels like he can't get a guy out, he's going to put him on. Yeah. Rafael, runners on first and second. I got him right where I want him, Dollis. And that is, man, that is difficult as a fan to watch. Okay? The guy is a human rain delay. Nobody takes more time before pitch. He's styling his hair. He's wandering around the mound. And you know what it is? He has found a way to frustrate batters to no end. You know? Just when the batter thinks that they have his sinker figured out, he gets off the mound, he throws to first, he wanders around. Now 2 minutes has gone by, and the guy's like, I don't think I even remember what that pitch looked like. You know?
It's true. No, it's crafty. You're right. It's crafty.
It's crafty. So listen, I know there are some Dollis haters out there. Just look at the numbers, okay? Take the emotional turmoil that he puts on you every time he takes the ball and hits the mound and ignore it. Because in the end, Rafael Dollis, we're very lucky to have this man in our bullpen, especially with our top three highest leverage bullpen guys out. Yeah. He's been a godsend. And despite the fact that, again, I get as nervous as anyone when you watch him trot out of that bullpen, he's been great. Yeah. Minus the one blow up.
Yeah, no, he's been great. I'd feel, sorry to go back to this, but I'd feel so much better with him on the mound if our infield was playing a little more competent.
Agreed.
We're not helping him out.
They're not, and he needs all the help he can get.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just look at Rafael Dollis' stuff, right? He throws 93, 94. You know, like when he's dealing, he's topping out at 94-ish. Yeah. You might see him brush 95. But for the most part, his average is around 91, 92 for his fastball. He relies heavily on his slider. He relies heavily on just being crafty, you know, just picking the corners. And this is another thing. You never see Rafael Dollis give in to a hitter. He would rather load the bases up and pitch to someone he feels comfortable against than go after someone and challenge someone that he thinks could hit his stuff. Yeah. It's impressive to have that kind of confidence in your stuff once you get to a guy you know you can get. Yeah. It's just not fun to watch for fans. Especially at the end of a game against, let's say, the Red Sox, like Wednesday, right? Where you're like, oh man, we need this win. And it's 4-2. And then of course he gives up a run because he's going to take every inch he can. You know, it's 4-3. And then you're just like,
Let's talk about the Red Sox for a minute. Can we? Because we both, I think everybody had them written off as not going to be in the playoff picture. It was a 3-horse race in the AL East. It was the New York Yankees were clear front runners, which they are what they are. And then we thought, well, it was going to be the Blue Jays and the Rays battling it out for a wild card spot. Well, I mean, the Yankees are the worst record in the American League, which is a joy to see, but we know that's not going to last. Right? One way or another, they are going to figure it out. That is a team with too much talent and too much money to not figure it out. They will still be probably the top team in the AL East by the end of the year when it's all said and done.
I agree with that.
The Rays are the Rays. They're exactly what we thought they were going to be. Their pitching staff somehow is awesome.
Has found a way. They're scrappy, defensively super sound. That's the thing. We play the Rays this
starting today.
Like we start our first series of the year against them today.
And we could get to the Rays in a second here, but the Red Sox are in first place. We just split with them. They swept the Orioles. They got swept by the Orioles. I don't know if this team is real or not. They're
hot right now.
They've beaten up on some bad teams. They've been beaten up by the Orioles. Do we think they're going to be a headache for the Blue Jays by August, September? Is this a team that we're going to be fighting with for a playoff spot?
Buddy, I want to just say no. I want to just say we don't need to worry about the Red Sox, but I'm starting to feel like maybe we do. Their starting pitching, which was what everyone thought would sink this team, has been far better than expected. And if Nate Eovaldi and Eduardo Rodriguez continue to pitch as well as they have and be those front end of the rotation starters that with Chris Sale injured that the Red Sox are missing, it's hard to say. I mean, Garrett Richards is Tanner Roark. Like, he's the guy we beat on Wednesday, the starting pitcher for the Red Sox. He's probably not going to be in that rotation much longer because he has looked awful. But other than him, that rotation's looked great.
They have. They've looked great. The one thing that I will say that makes me think maybe this Red Sox isn't for real is that they're only 2 games above 500, and their bats have been white hot.
Yes.
That won't last. Whether they're still a good offense or not, I mean, that remains to be seen. But basically, their entire lineup is hitting above 300 right now.
That's very true.
That's not sustainable for 160 games. Like, period.
No, 100. So, 100%.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the sooner they fall off, the better I'm going to feel. Because the longer they stick around, the more confidence they have, the more confidence that front office has that, like, hey, maybe we're only one piece away. We don't want those guys being buyers at the trade deadline.
We do not want the Red Sox buying at the trade deadline. That's the last thing that the Toronto Blue Jays need.
I mean,
and JD Martinez has looked like JD Martinez from 2018. Again, we're 18 games into the season, so small sample size.
Right.
However, JD Martinez is a guy who has done it before. He's got the experience. He's got a big World Series ring on his finger. He believes in this Red Sox team. And, you know, having a guy like that on your team can do a lot for some of these, you know, kids coming up, guys like Rafael Devers, who looks for real. You know, Verdugo looks for real. Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm really hoping that, they cool off, and by June, we're laughing about this conversation.
I hope you're right. Let's mark it on the calendar and let's revisit this clip because I hope we're laughing.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into this Tampa Bay series here before we get to the last thing I want to talk about before we throw to the lovely Ali Schroeder of the Canadian Women's National Baseball Team. So the pitching looks like this. Steven Matz going against Tyler Glasnow tonight. Glasnow obviously is the Rays' big stud pitcher. he is turned into a pretty legitimate ace. He's a guy who throws 96, 97, has a really, really good curveball that complements his fastball very well. Kittredge and Robbie Ray go head-to-head tomorrow. That is the game I'm looking at. If for some reason the Jays manage to take 2 of 3 here, that is going to be incredibly important. And then Fleming versus Ryu. We've got our 3 best pitchers up right now in this series. Montoya did a little bit of massaging
creative
the
accounting
lineup on Wednesday to make this happen. You know, they could have gone with Matz on Wednesday and chose to push him. I think it was a good move. I mean, because of the win, you know, had they lost, I'd be very upset right now. But I said last week, if the Jays can win 1 against Boston and 1 against Tampa Bay with all the injuries that they're dealing with, that's a win. I don't particularly wish to be 3 games under 500 by Monday. However, there could be worse things. And if we can take 2 of 3 here, beauty. Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. Okay. Let's get to other MLB stuff before we get to our interview. Okay. I wanted to talk. We'll talk first real quick. Just COD. I messaged you today and I was like, what's COD? And you're like, Call of Duty? Like the biggest video game maybe ever? I'm like, oh, yeah, right. Right. Acronyms. Okay. So there's a video that was caught last night of Mike Trout hits a double. He gets onto second base. Carlos Correa is there, and he's like, hey, buddy, you playing COD tonight? We're all doing a game. And Correa's like, well, if you want to lose that badly, you know I'm in. It's just really cool to watch, like, these guys are playing baseball is like the only sport where the players can make plans with each other during the game, you know?
No, absolutely. I was thinking about that when you said that baseball is like the only sport where that happens. And I was thinking, well, there's a lot of downtime in football, but there isn't that same level of friendliness.
No, there's not.
There's a lot of animosity.
Yeah.
It's a very like war-driven game of football, but baseball is very casual. And I think that's why, honestly, I love playing slow pitch so much, like as a recreational activity, it's so casual. I don't know.
No, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I don't know.
All right, my man. Last thing I wanted to touch on here is the Milwaukee Brewers, because this team is running away with the NL Central and have been unbelievable. Leave it to the Brewers to pick guys up that were discarded by other teams and turn them into offensive juggernauts. Of course, the most painful ones for Jays fans to watch is Travis Shaw and Billy McKinney, who are at the top of their order right now and have been incredible. Mm-hmm. I don't think that they're going to stay as hot as they have been, but they're putting up big numbers. And Corbin Burns, I wish to talk about this man for a second here because he is putting up video game numbers right now. He has been the most dominant pitcher in Major League Baseball this season. It has been mind-blowing to watch. He has 40 strikeouts and 0 walks in his first 4 games. Think about that.
Staggering.
10 strikeouts a game. He's not walking anyone. His ERA is 0.37.
Wow.
Like, to put this in perspective, okay, Corbin Burns has more starts this season with 9+ Ks and 0 walks, 4, than Jacob deGrom had in either 2019 or 2018, a year he won the Cy Young Award both years. Wow. Corbin Burns has thrown 40 strikeouts and no walks, and he's only had 3 balls in the count 18 times.
Wow.
In 4 games, he's had 3 balls in a count 18 times.
That's wild.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It doesn't even make sense, man. Like, I don't want to overdo the stats here, but I do want to give you this last little stat here. Since the beginning of last season, Corbin Burns has pitched 83.2 innings. He has a 1.61 ERA. He has 13.7 strikes per 9 innings, 2.4 walks per 9 innings. He's allowed 13 extra base hits. In 83 innings, he's allowed 13 extra base hits, and he has a WAR of 3.8.
Wow.
So Jacob deGrom, since last season, 88 innings pitched, 1.94 ERA, 14 strikeouts per 9 innings, 2.2 walks per 9 innings, 26 extra base hits allowed, and a 3.7 wins above replacement. So Corbin Burns is literally putting up better numbers than the best pitcher in all of baseball, a guy that is arguably the greatest of all time to throw a baseball. It's actually insane what this dude is doing. And he's doing it with the Brewers, and he's doing it under the radar and with very little fanfare. I mean, Milwaukee fans are losing their mind that he's not getting the attention he deserves. But it's crazy, dude.
Wow, that's wild. That's absolutely wild. I mean, that'll be a cool story to kind of watch all year, and hopefully he doesn't taper off. I mean,
agreed.
Those are just always cool stories. I'd rather watch him put up stupid numbers than Trevor Bauer. So,
which, by the way, Corbin Burns in 2018 was the worst pitcher in baseball. He had the most innings pitched with the highest ERA. He had an over 8 ERA in 2018. So this is one of those examples of why maybe you don't always throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Like, this is a guy who had a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, threw a good changeup, just struggled with location, and the Brewers stuck with him, and now they have this gem that of a guy who has, 83 innings pitched over the last 2 years, like shortened season last year and the beginning of this season. It's not a tiny sample size. Nope. Like, it's not huge, but it's definitely it means something.
We're not just looking at 2 or 3 starts here, is what you're saying.
No.
So,
all right. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. You can check out all of our interviews and so on and so forth on our YouTube page, The Walk Off Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, at Walk Off Podcast, or on Instagram, The Walk Off Podcast. Appreciate you listening. Now, enjoy Ali Schroeder, everybody.